From childhood to adulthood, Ping Nanjin has always been the pride of everyone. Only I have seen him, at 17, under the shade of a tree, quietly reaching out to touch my sister's shadow. But when I turned 20, the Ping family chose the ordinary me to enter an arranged marriage with Ping Nanjin. My sister went abroad in heartbreak. For the first time, Ping Nanjin rebelled and flew overseas on our wedding day. I saw him return with my pregnant sister only 5 years later. Perhaps out of guilt, Ping Nanjin invited me to a meal. After dinner, he politely asked me how I'd been these years, whether I had a boyfriend. I shook my head. His phone rang, drowning out the words I was about to say. Not a boyfriend anymore. I'm married. He picked up the call. Outside the floor-to-ceiling window, a 3-year-old boy wearing a backpack waved excitedly at me. The hot pot we finished was still steaming. In Ping Nanjin's phone, that sticky voice carried the familiar willful arrogance I knew best. Her tone rose, faintly slipping into my ears. I'm already outside the door. Just come out. The hand holding his phone tightened slightly, his knuckles turning pale. He looked at me with a hint of embarrassment, and what seemed like guilt flickered in his eyes. I shifted my gaze away, looking out the window. My son stood outside, shaking the big red award flower he was holding. His little face was flushed with excitement. Outside the old restaurant in late autumn, the ginkgo leaves were already golden. A breeze blew at dusk, sending the yellow leaves drifting silently to the ground, scattering them. Ping Nanjin spoke in a low voice, as if soothing and explaining something to the person on the line. I stood up. I pointed toward the window, gesturing that I had to leave. The man lifted his eyes toward me, then toward the child outside. Confusion surfaced in his gaze. I walked out of the restaurant. My son ran over, crashing into my arms, eagerly showing me the big red award flower he won in kindergarten. I raised my hand and gently touched his head. Zhao Zhao is amazing. Behind me, Ping Nanjin's increasingly startled voice sounded. Sengyu, you're really a kindergarten teacher now. I held Zhao Zhao's hand and calmly explained. This is my son. Behind me, a woman's giggle burst out. I turned around and saw my sister, Sengyu, pressed against Ping Nanjin's side. She was always the one everyone indulged. 5 years apart, she was still the same flamboyant and lively girl. Except now, her belly was slightly rounded. She openly hugged one of Ping Nanjin's arms, lifted her chin, and looked at me. Xiaoyu, even if you're unhappy that Nanjin chose me and left you back then, you don't have to make up such a big child, right? Zhao Zhao clenched his fists angrily and glared at Sengyu. I am Mommy's child. Mommy had me after she married Daddy. Sengyu covered her mouth, laughing so hard her shoulders shook. Ping Nanjin looked as calm as always. After a long while, he finally spoke. Sengyu, you're not quite like you were 5 years ago. He only meant. The dull, obedient Sengyu from 5 years ago could never have made up a 3-year-old son. The nanny drove over. I said nothing more, and took Zhao Zhao into the car. On the way back, Zhao Zhao suddenly asked me, Mommy, was that uncle your friend? I pulled him onto my lap and shook my head. He lifted his eyes at me curiously. Then why does Mommy keep a photo of that uncle in your book? A sliver of cold air seeped in through the cracked window. I froze for a moment. I thought I had thrown everything away 5 years ago. Maybe back then, there were simply too many things related to Ping Nanjin. Even after carefully clearing them out, something still got left behind. Zhao Zhao continued. But the uncle in the photo. He's wearing blue and white clothes and holding a trophy. He doesn't look as old as that uncle. In my memory, that photo slowly pieced itself together. My thoughts were pulled back to many years ago. Ping Nanjin was a genius. Everyone who knew him said so. He won a piano gold medal at 7, a national middle school athletics gold medal at 11. He entered university at 13, majoring in quantum chemistry. At 16, he led a team to discover a new nanostructure and won a $1,000,000 international award. His life seemed flawless. But this genius, always standing high above everyone else, many years ago, on a mountaintop, knelt halfway before me and fed me a piece of candy, then carried me down hundreds of stone steps from the summit to the foot of the mountain. I had never tasted anything good. Growing up, my parents' attention was always on my willful, reckless sister. So just a single piece of candy during my low blood sugar made me secretly love Ping Nanjin for 7 years. I got used to sneaking to the neighboring university, watching him from behind. I saw him standing tall as the flag raiser on stage. I hid among the crowd and saw his blue and white photo posted in first place on the science competition awards board. Until one day, my sister climbed the wall to go to an internet cafe with a delinquent and got punished with standing on the flag platform. After school, Ping Nanjin came to the middle school to help lower the flag. I was cleaning the playground in an inconspicuous corner when I saw him behind my sister, staring blankly at her elongated shadow on the ground. Then he silently and hesitantly reached out his hand, so careful, so cautious. He tapped the tips of my sister's fingers in the shadow, just once, before pulling his hand back in a hurry. The boy who always lived above the clouds. Even he would show such a fleeting, panicked expression. The candy I ate from him many years ago seemed to turn entirely bitter in that moment, rising from my stomach to my throat. My sister, who had always been spoiled, reckless, and never learned anything. Even if she poked a hole in the sky, our parents would patch it for her. And even someone as perfect as Ping Nanjin was obsessed with her. I often flipped through the university journals where Ping Nanjin studied, and saw his article again. He wrote, "I stayed in a cage and saw a disobedient little bird. It squeezed out through the bars and bit through the curtain of the dark room. It rushed into the sky it longed for. People praise me for being obedient, but I yearn for the sky that little bird can reach." So he liked my sister. My parents seemed to realize something, and went to the Pings to propose a marriage alliance, hoping to climb higher. When Ping Nanjin's parents were about to drive them out, Ping Nanjin unexpectedly spoke. "We can try." That must have been the first time in his life he expressed his own will in front of his parents. So the Ping family's old madam said lovingly, "Nanjin has listened to you too since he was young. For his lifelong matter, let him decide just this once." The two families settled the engagement. But my sister, who had agreed beforehand, suddenly changed her mind. I thought he would object at least a little. Didn't expect him to be this boring and obedient. How am I supposed to live with someone like that for a lifetime? My parents couldn't bear to scold her, nor could they afford to offend the Ping family. Naturally, they pushed me out to clean up the mess. Even though I hadn't even graduated from university. In my life, I had picked up countless things my sister threw away. Only this time, what fell into my hands was the person I had silently admired for 10 years. Someone I didn't even dare dream of. The elders of the Ping family didn't notice anything wrong. My parents had only said from the start that the bride is the Sang family's daughter. But Ping Nanjin knew very well that my parents were not originally referring to me. At the family dinner, he remained silent, and I sat there feeling like I was on pins and needles. After the meal, guilt gnawed at me. I gathered my courage and asked to speak with him alone in the backyard. I thought, even if I really liked Ping Nanjin, I didn't want to spend my life with someone who didn't love me. If he wasn't happy, I wouldn't be either. But under the moonlight, Ping Nanjin spoke gently to me. "I will take responsibility for you and for our marriage." My suspended heart immediately pounded like a drum. It was the first time in so many years that he and I became us. The word marriage felt like some irresistible enchantment. Though I still wanted to ask whether he could ever love me, Ping Nanjin reached out, and in the night adjusted the scarf around my neck. From such a close distance, I remembered many years ago, when he knelt halfway before me, and fed me that candy as I nearly fainted from low blood sugar. I watched his pale fingers pinch the gray scarf around my neck. And suddenly I thought maybe he did have at least a little affection for me. That was enough. At least, based on what I knew of him, he would never betray me. But I forgot. What I knew were only countless views of his back. When we began preparing our wedding, my sister, who had broken off the engagement, suddenly returned. She had been dumped by the delinquent and came back covered in bruises. She flipped through my wedding dress designs, then stared at the bracelet the old madam of the Ping family gave me. Then she looked at me with displeasure. "Sang-yu, why do you always like picking up other people's leftovers?" I clenched the bracelet, my face flushed red. The engagement was approved by Ping Nanjin. It's my marriage with him. My sister burst out laughing. She touched the bruise on her neck and took 2 steps toward me. Then, in her eyes appeared the expression I knew best. That mocking, contemptuous certainty of victory. With a smile she spoke slowly. Sang-yu, I don't actually care to fight you for him. I don't even like him. But when I see you pitifully clinging to some worthless thing you finally managed to get, and then I take it away from you with just a curl of my finger, that humiliated, unwilling look on your face. You have no idea how entertaining it is. I clenched my teeth and raised the hand that had been tightly balled up, and slapped her hard across the face. My sister screamed. My parents rushed down immediately, surrounding her in distress. Ping Nanjin happened to arrive then, bringing the wedding planning documents for me. He stepped inside and saw my sister covered in bruises, her face streaked with tears. His steps froze, and his expression changed abruptly. My sister looked at him and burst into tears. The moment she cried, Ping Nanjin's eyes trembled, and he rushed toward her without hesitation. My father scolded the delinquent's terrible behavior. My mother wiped her tears. Ping Nanjin lifted my sister into his arms. I heard the tremor in his voice. Call the police first. Then go to the hospital for an examination. From the moment he entered to the moment he left, he didn't even notice me standing by the window not far away. Madam, we've arrived. The nanny's voice pulled me back from my thoughts. The car had stopped outside the pet funeral home. I got out. Leading Zhao Zhao, I walked through the lobby to the back operating room. I changed my clothes and put on a mask. I was going to clean and stitch up a Samoyed that had just been delivered, killed in a car accident. The dog owner wept and said to me, I'll pay anything. Please make him look like he did when he was alive. I took the surgical needle and thread and suddenly couldn't help but think, if I died in a car accident, probably no one would be willing to spend money to stitch up my body. Zhao Zhao pestered me from my phone and made a video call. The call was quickly answered, revealing Fu Xingye standing by the sea in a floral shirt. I heard him click his tongue softly. Little brat, I thought your mom had a conscience and was actually willing to call me. A scantily clad woman squeezed her face into the screen. President Fu, whose kid is this? Fu Xingye replied. My son. Then there was a burst of laughter from a group of people, mixed with playful jokes. Why don't you say he's your grandson? In the screen, the woman laughed so hard she bent over, reaching out to put her hand on his shoulder. Zhao Zhao looked a little unhappy. I took off my gloves, took the phone and wanted to hang up. But Fu Xingye took a few steps, and only he was left on the screen. He restrained his smile and apologized to me. Sorry, it was a last-minute arrangement at the company. I can be back tonight. If it's inconvenient for you, I'll have my assistant come and pick him up. I said softly. It's okay. Fu Xingye hesitated, and after a long while said, Xiao Deng said he bumped into you and Ping Nanjin at the restaurant. He's back. I touched Zhao Zhao's head, told him to go play on the swing in the garden. Then I replied, yes. The sea breeze messed up the hair on Fu Xingye's forehead. He looked away, not knowing where he was looking. Sang-yu if you need it. I'll cooperate with the divorce. I was stunned for a moment and said, why are you suddenly saying this? Fu Xingye lowered his eyes, and I didn't hear his voice anymore. I remembered the woman who had just leaned on him, and I seemed to understand. I spoke again. If you need it, we can divorce now. Zhao Zhao is 3 years old, he can understand. Fu Xingye abruptly interrupted me. I don't need it. I was surprised by his strong reaction, and looked at him strangely, but he quickly returned to his usual frivolous appearance. I'm a confirmed bachelor, what would I need? You're not in a hurry to. His voice lowered, quickly glossing over the rest of the sentence. Not in a hurry to marry Ping Nanjin. But my hearing has always been good. Even though I knew he always talked nonsense, I still suddenly felt a flash of displeasure. Why would I look for him? Fu Xingye didn't speak. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my emotions. I said softly, Fu Xingye, I'm not that cheap either. I didn't listen to the apology on the other end, and hung up the phone. 5 years ago, when Ping Nanjin suddenly abandoned me at the wedding, I had an emotional breakdown and suffered from depression. For the first time in my life, I had a hysterical outburst. At that time, Everyone was like Fu Xingye. They thought I loved Ping Nanjing too much and couldn't live without him. They were convinced that my relentless tantrums and rampages had suddenly turned me into a madwoman. It was just to force Ping Nanjing to return to the country, to force him to complete that unfinished wedding. But I knew very well that I really didn't love him anymore. I hated him. I denounced Ping Nanjing's betrayal of me, accused my sister of hurting me. I spent a lot of money to find many media reporters. I wanted to ruin him, ruin Sangyu. Even in the end, all my accusations were quickly suppressed by the Ping family. Not even a single word managed to reach Ping Nanjing's ears abroad. My first outburst was to fight for justice for myself. I wanted all the people who ridiculed me, blamed me, and didn't distinguish between right and wrong to understand that they were wrong. But the final result of the outburst was just shooting myself in the foot. I drank heavily in grief and anger, but was sent to someone else's bed by my mother. She said that I should accept my fate and help Ping Nanjing and Sangyu. After that, I sued my mother and threw her in jail for a year. I made a scene at my father's company, almost completely destroying his career, and completely ruined my own reputation and innocence. The Ping family deliberately allowed the rumors to spread, saying that the previously gentle and courteous Ping Nanjing suddenly regretted the marriage, because I had already cheated on him before. I was already pregnant with a child, and couldn't have an abortion due to health reasons. The trauma I suffered became ironclad proof that I betrayed Ping Nanjing. No one believed that the flawless Ping Nanjing would betray the marriage contract. So when the Ping family released even a tiny bit of information, proving that the fault was mine, everyone immediately believed it. I had made a scene, I had fought. I even went abroad and looked for Ping Nanjing like a madwoman. I wanted to argue with him hysterically, to scold him for being so disgusting. Since he couldn't let go of Sangyu, why did he accept the marriage contract with me? How had I wronged him? To make him leave me in my wedding dress in the back room, suddenly fleeing abroad from the wedding ceremony. I frantically searched for him, but I lost my phone, and with it his contact information. No one was willing to give it to me. After going abroad, the world felt so vast. I couldn't find him, couldn't find Sangyu. He abandoned me, the one disgraced and ruined, but that also became me. I made a scene, again and again. I deteriorated into moderate depression and lost my internship as a kindergarten teacher. After giving birth to the child, I slashed my wrists with a blade, fell from a high building, and got into a car accident in the middle of the road. I narrowly escaped death time and time again. Then I realized no one cared. Even the one who paid for my life-saving medical bills was Fu Xingye, who had given me a nightmare one night. I suddenly discovered that even death was such a meaningless thing. I stopped harming myself. I started using the excuse of seeing the child. Entering Fu Xingye's house, I plunged the blade into his heart. I put the sleeping pills I bought for myself into the warm water he drank in the morning. He was taken away by ambulance due to his injuries. He was forced to interrupt an important meeting because he fainted at the company. I experienced a strange, twisted sense of pleasure. My depression actually began to gradually improve, and the infant in swaddling clothes began to grab my finger and laboriously call me Mama. In the sunlight shining in through the window, I suddenly realized it was spring again in the new year. I suddenly remembered that Sangyu, who as a teenager always sat in the back row of the classroom, obediently studying. She was not likable, but she worked hard and shouldn't have ended up like this. I started looking for a job again. I had made a scene for more than half a year, gaining a terrible reputation. I couldn't find any good jobs, and after searching everywhere, only a pet funeral parlor wanted me. Dealing with dead things, the gloomy atmosphere in other people's eyes, and the mediocre salary. But I still stayed, thinking of changing later when I found something suitable. But in the blink of an eye, for years had passed. I obtained a pet funeral director certificate and never left the industry again. I made a big fuss like having a dream. Now, it seemed that I had returned to that silent, insignificant Sangyu. But in reality, the moment I saw Ping Nanjing again, I still had a moment of impulse. I wanted to pour the hot pot on the table over his head, until Zhao Zhao waved to me excitedly among the ginkgo leaves falling outside the window. I realized that I was starting to feel a little reluctant to part with my current life. I am not an opponent of the Ping family, not an opponent of Ping Nanjing. Zhao Zhao clung to me for several days in a row. When he was with me, he was incredibly obedient. I couldn't bear it, and since I was unusually free from work, I took him to and from school for a few days. I don't know if it's because seeing Ping Nanjing again after many years reminded me of many past events, making me feel uncomfortable. On the way to pick up and drop off Zhao Zhao, I always felt a little distracted, feeling like someone was following me. I even felt for a moment, in the fleeting car shadow in the rearview mirror, that it looked like Ping Nanjing's car. But when I looked back, everything was normal again. Until Thursday morning, Zhao Zhao's teacher suddenly called me to say Zhao Zhao had gotten into trouble at school. He is usually playful, but always knows his limits and doesn't cause trouble. This was the first time in more than a year since he started school that a teacher complained about him. I worried that he was being bullied and rushed to the kindergarten. When I arrived at the teacher's office, I saw a calm-looking Ping Nanjing and Sangyu, sitting on the sofa supporting her belly, complaining and frowning repeatedly. Seeing me come in, Sangyu stood up with a whoosh. Her face was shocked and disgusted. "Why is it you again? Sangyu, is that really your son?" I ignored her and asked the teacher what was going on. The teacher explained to me awkwardly. Mr. Ping brought his wife to the kindergarten to reserve a place for the child in her womb. Little friend Fu Zhaozhao bumped into Mrs. Ping's belly in the hallway. Mr. Ping's intention is, the child is still young, an apology will suffice. Zhao Zhao stood aside angrily, obviously unwilling to apologize. That's when the teacher called me to come over. Zhao Zhao's eyes were red, and after a long while he said angrily in a low voice. I went out of the classroom to go to the toilet. I was very far away from her. She suddenly ran over and grabbed my hand. I just shook her hand off. He clenched his fists, then looked at me with some fear. Mom, I didn't disobey. I didn't bump into the auntie's belly. When he was over 2 years old, he had overheard the family's nanny gossiping, saying that I didn't want to give birth to him and didn't want to raise him. Later, although Fu Xingye fired that nanny. But after that, no matter how playful Zhao Zhao was, when he was in front of me, he became especially obedient, even cautious. The child is young, but he understands everything. I believe him, and I know Sangyu's character very well. I walked over and embraced the frightened Zhao Zhao. Then I looked at the teacher and said, "Then let's look at the surveillance." Sangyu was instantly guilty and stood up with a whoosh saying, "Nanjing said he looked familiar. I remembered that he was the son you made up, so I went up to take a look." Who knew, pulling his hand would make him angry? Ping Nanjing turned his head and looked out the window. A hint of discomfort seemed to flash across the depths of his eyes for a moment. I coldly demanded that Sangyu apologize. Then I comforted Zhao Zhao and let him go back to the classroom. I left the kindergarten and was going to hail a taxi by the roadside to return to the funeral parlor. Behind me, Ping Nanjing's voice suddenly rang out. When was he born? His voice melted into the wind, blown with a bit of a tremor. I stood by the roadside, without turning my head. It's none of your business. I heard the sound of his footsteps approaching from behind. The afternoon sun in late autumn stretched his slender shadow in front of me. I suddenly remembered. Many years ago, he secretly touched Sangyu's shadow on the national flag platform. Silently, I moved a step to the side, avoiding the overlapping shadows. Ping Nanjing walked to my side. I saw the bulging veins on the back of his tense hand. Sangyu, I checked his school admission information. He's in middle class now, 4.5 years old, not 3. My fingertips suddenly trembled. I turned my head and calmly looked at him, saying, "So." A trace of gentleness surfaced in Ping Nanjing's eyes. Like that night 5 years ago. The expression he had when he promised to be responsible for me. Responsible for the marriage. He took a light breath and stepped closer to me again, his tall figure covering my shadow. He said in a deep voice, "You like children. But at least, I should have the right to know." I was stunned for a moment. I thought he knew about what happened to me 5 years ago, but it turned out he had such an absurd misunderstanding. I felt unable to comprehend. "You suspect Zhao Zhao is your child?" In Ping Nanjing's voice, there was extreme calm confidence. "Not suspect. Sangyu, there is no other possibility. I looked at him for a long time, making sure he wasn't the type to joke. I really couldn't help but laugh softly. Ping Nanjing, between you and me, how could there possibly be a child? Before my wedding with him, there were indeed a few times. But his life always followed a routine, self-disciplined and restrained. Even in bed, he never lost his reason. At that time he was exceptionally busy in the research institute, working around the clock. He didn't have the energy for a child yet. Things he hadn't planned would never happen unexpectedly. At least, I wouldn't be that accident. But now, the gentleness in Ping Nanjing's eyes gradually faded. He stared at me and said, "Anything can happen unexpectedly. Once it's happened, there could be a child." The word accident actually came out of his mouth. I didn't want to argue with him anymore, so I just calmly told him, "Zhao Zhao is not your child." I reached out to hail a taxi. But Ping Nanjing suddenly reached out and pulled back my hand stretched out towards the street. He looked at me with such a calm yet stubborn tone. "He is my child." I felt annoyed and impatient, and forcefully pulled my hand back. Ping Nanjing looked at my face, as if seeing something very novel. "Sang you actually get angry." I took 2 steps back, glaring at him with cold vigilance. He never used to pester like this. The wind swirled up dead leaves on the street, and a hint of redness appeared in the corner of Ping Nanjing's eyes. His voice, for the first time, lost its usual calmness. "You can accept everything your family shoves at you, including a husband to spend your life with. Even if you're abandoned at the wedding, you can still silently give birth to a child and continue living. I thought someone like you would always be docile and never know how to get angry." So 5 years ago, my half a year of crazy tantrums. The Ping family really kept the news very tight, not letting Ping Nanjing know anything, or be affected in any way. A taxi pulled up beside me. I reached out to stop it, pulled open the door and got in. Behind me was Ping Nanjing's trembling voice. "If 5 years ago, your parents forced you to accept a beggar from the street, would you have accepted it?" I closed the car door, shutting out his voice. In the rearview mirror, his hand hanging at his side clenched silently. On a weekend evening, as I was leaving the funeral home after work, I suddenly received a call from the nanny saying that Zhao Zhao was missing. She took Zhao Zhao to the shopping mall to buy groceries. She turned her head for a moment, and the person was gone. The voice on the other end was terrified. I checked the shopping mall's surveillance footage. It seems to be that Mr. Ping took him away. In my mind, there was a loud bang. At that moment, I remembered Ping Nanjing standing on the street staring at me. His stubborn and forceful sentence, "He is my child." The first time I saw Ping Nanjing again after 5 years, I thought he was still the same as before, always able to put on a calm, self-possessed, and sanctimonious act. But now I suddenly realized he had changed. Or rather, he was more like he had gone mad. My phone buzzed, and someone sent me a text message. It contained the address of a research institute. Not thinking about anything else, I took a taxi and rushed over. My hands kept shaking on the way, and my vision was blurry. When I arrived at the research institute, Ping Nanjing was wearing a white lab coat and had locked himself in the gene testing room. Through the glass in the door, I saw the test tube he was holding in his hand. Inside it was a scarlet blood sample. He lowered his eyes, his movements calm and composed. He was using chemical reagents to extract the DNA inside. His students stood beside him, handing him tools. As if he hadn't illegally taken someone else's child, illegally extracted someone else's sample, but was doing the most ordinary test. My whole body trembled, and I frantically pounded on the door. He could hear, but he ignored me. My teeth chattered. I moved a chair from the hallway and smashed it against the glass in the door with all my might. The sudden, violent sound attracted a crowd from the research institute. Ping Nanjing finally glanced sideways, looking at me through the glass. He was always calm. Just like 5 years ago, when he left without a word, leaving me to be the hysterical madwoman. The chair smashed against the glass until it finally cracked. My hair came loose and fell around me. The people who had rushed over looked at me with shocked and dissatisfied expressions. I felt like I was back on that day 5 years ago. That day, I knew nothing. I walked from backstage onto the stage, holding up the hem of my wedding dress. Then I was suddenly confronted with a flood of strange, mocking, and questioning gazes. I heard people whispering below the stage that Ping Nanjin had sent a message to his parents and fled the country to escape the wedding. Those overwhelming voices surged towards me like a raging tide. Nanjin wouldn't do something like that. He's always been so sensible and considerate. Did the young couple have a fight? Did something happen between them? The Sang family was trying to climb the social ladder with the Ping family. Did they force Nanjin to marry? Sang Yu, that child, although she's well behaved, she's still not quite good enough for Nanjin. Those voices, which had long stopped echoing in my mind, became vivid again. Amidst the intense ringing in my ears, I hysterically continued to smash the glass. I roared hysterically, "Give me back Zhao Zhao. Ping Nanjin, get out here." Someone from the research institute stepped forward to pull me away and dissuade me, but I violently shook them off. They frowned in dissatisfaction. "Mr. Ping would never take your child. His research is extremely important and cannot be disturbed. If you continue like this, we'll have to call the police." Call the police, call the police. I suddenly regained a little reason. I frantically pulled out my phone, about to dial the police. But the laboratory door suddenly opened. Ping Nanjin left the students inside and came out himself. He lowered his gaze to look at me, at my disheveled and almost insane appearance. His gaze shifted downwards. Then he saw the police number already entered on my phone screen. He slowly took off his gloves, lowered his eyes, and asked me in a deep voice, "Sang Yu, are you sure you want to call the police before you see your child?" My hand trembled, and I couldn't dial the number. I didn't dare to gamble. I hardly recognized the man in front of me. I even couldn't help but wonder if he had developed some kind of mental illness. I gripped my phone tightly, my teeth chattering, and slapped him hard across the face. "Where's Zhao Zhao? Where did you put him?" Ping Nanjin took the slap, his face turning to one side. A red mark remained on half his face, and his lips were pale. He calmly turned his head back. His gaze was as stubborn as it had been when he stood on the street back then. "I will prove that he is my child." That surging hatred that I had suppressed for 5 years, at that moment, screamed again, wanting to break free from the bottom of my heart. I glared at him with bloodshot eyes, my voice reduced to a hoarse whisper. "Even if you prove it, then what?" The corners of Ping Nanjin's lips twitched. His hand, hanging by his side, clenched into a fist, his knuckles stiff. This time he didn't say anything. I was gradually beginning to not be able to see him clearly, and I really couldn't understand. "Ping Nanjin, what? What do you want to do?" "Prove that after he broke off our engagement and abandoned me, while he was abroad being loving with Sang Yu for 5 years, I could still give birth to his child without anger or resentment. Prove that after he came back with a pregnant Sang Yu, I still care so much about his child. Prove how cheap, how unscrupulous and shameless I am." Ping Nanjin looked at me. Then almost pathetically, he lowered his eyes and avoided my gaze. He said something so difficultly, as if uttering an extremely unspeakable sentence. "Sang Yu, I might be a little regretful." I couldn't believe my ears. And whether he regretted it or not, what did it have to do with me? For a long while, I could only almost grit my teeth and squeeze out 2 words. "Sick." He obviously wouldn't tell me where Zhao Zhao was for now. I was anxious as if my heart was on fire. I could only search around the research institute, anxiously looking like a headless fly. Ping Nanjin calmly followed behind me, his voice resolute. "If he wasn't my child, you wouldn't be this agitated." I grabbed a file from a nearby desk and threw it at him hard. Blood appeared on his forehead, but a hint of pleasure appeared in his eyes. "For the first time, I feel like you're a living person." My emotions gradually collapsed. I stared with wide eyes, throwing everything I could get my hands on at him. "Where's Zhao Zhao? Where is Zhao Zhao?" Ping Nanjin moved closer, pressing down on my frantically trembling hands. I heard his distorted voice. "If I said Sang Yu's baby isn't mine, I can end things with her at any time. If I said I could take you and Zhao Zhao back to the wedding house we bought 5 years ago." He was really crazy. I took a step back, and he grabbed my shoulders. He leaned down, staring at me from so close. "If that's the case, would you be happy too?" I pushed and shoved him frantically. "Get away. Disgusting, disgusting." The taut string in my mind was being cut by an invisible knife. I was about to lose my footing. I was about to lose sight of Ping Nanjin. He approached me heavily, blocking the light above my head. I was about to lose hearing of his voice. Sangyu, I thought I had finally escaped that cage. But only when I truly escaped for the first time did I realize that what I wanted to escape from didn't include you. I yearned for Sangyu's freedom and indulgence, and so I wanted to get close to her. But only when I chased after her did I realize that I just wanted to use her as an excuse to escape. I didn't love her. His voice faded further and further away. But why, in 5 years, didn't you even look for me? Does it really not matter to you at all? I couldn't hear him anymore. My back hit the wall. I couldn't retreat any further. Everything around me started to shake. The fear of being trapped, that I hadn't felt for so many years, was once again dragged into that dark and sunless night. It felt like fire was scorching my body, like my brain was about to explode. The man with the fleshy face who held me down. The knife I found, piercing his shoulder. The man's screams, the stinging slap on my face. The world spun, and I stumbled out of that room. I had nowhere to go. I didn't know where that so-called mother who sent me into the abyss was hiding, waiting to photograph more of my ugly state, making me a laughingstock in front of everyone again. I dared not return to the Sang family, to walk right into their trap. I had no choice but to go to Fu Xingye's house. He was away on a business trip that month, and he paid me to help him feed his dog. I had known him since childhood, but our personalities were completely different, and we never got along. But he said to me, "Sangyu, my dog is very annoying. If I ask a domestic helper to take care of it, I'm afraid they won't be able to stand it and will abuse my dog. But you're different, you have the most stable personality." He was saying I was reliable. At that time, because I wanted to take revenge and ruin Ping Nanjin and Sangyu, I frantically spent a lot of money on media. In the end, I got nothing in return, and I ended up in dire straits. When I pushed open that door and staggered into the darkness, Fu Xingye had come back early, and was sitting on the sofa drinking. The last shred of sanity I had been clinging to after escaping from the hotel had long been exhausted by the drugs. After that night, Fu Xingye apologized to me, said he had moderate depression, and sometimes had hallucinations. He thought it was a hallucination, so he didn't push me away. I didn't believe him, that playboy would have depression. I even thought he was deliberately mocking my illness. I had an emotional breakdown and injured his forehead with a glass bottle. His forehead was stitched up with 7 stitches, his eyes turned red, but he didn't say a word. Both he and I were mentally ill, and we lived in a daze for many days. Then there was the facing the fact that I couldn't abort the child, facing the custody of the child after it was born. I stabbed the knife into Fu Xingye's heart, but I still could only use the lawyer he found to accuse and sue my mother. Then I faced my father using the most filthy and vicious language to scold me as a bitch and an ungrateful wretch. I went to my father's company and had a shouting match with him. Endless. Those dark and hopeless days of despair. Actually, in these past few years, I've been trying very hard not to think about them anymore. The psychologist said that I was recovering well. Depression can never be cured. But as long as I can control myself from thinking back, those past events can always be gradually forgotten. But at this moment, Ping Nanjin was holding my shoulders. He was blocking the light above my head. He was pressing down on me heavily. It seemed that the next moment his thin lips were about to touch my lips. On his face, I saw the shadow of the man with the fleshy face. I saw the shameless self turned into a monster after being controlled by drugs. My ears were filled with sharp, chaotic, and countless sounds. I couldn't push him away, and my sanity collapsed in an instant. I bit his arm hard. At this moment, I hated that I couldn't bite off a piece of flesh. Ping Nanjin's hand trembled slightly. He didn't break free. His voice was trembling. "Sangyu, I'm sorry. 5 years ago, I shouldn't have abandoned you." Fresh blood slid down his arm to my chin. There was no relief, only deeper disgust. I looked at him in endless exhaustion. "Ping Nanjin, what? What else do you want?" Fresh blood dripped from Ping Nanjin's arm onto the ground. His eyes were filled with helplessness and confusion. "I want to take you and Zhao Zhao." Outside the door, a knock suddenly rang. the student who stayed in the lab, walked in. Teacher, the gene test results are out. A huge eagerness and joy flashed in Ping Nanjin's eyes in an instant. He snatched the form from the student's hand. Then, at the moment he saw the contents, his expression suddenly froze. The evidence he personally identified clearly told him that Zhao Zhao was not his child. No surprise. He clenched the form very hard, was very puzzled, and then gradually became anxious. Suddenly, he seemed to understand something, and his expression relaxed again. He gently put down the form, turned back to look at me and said, "Sangyu, why did you adopt a child?" I was absent-minded. Zhao Zhao is my own biological child. Impossible. Ping Nanjin chuckled softly, his expression helpless, like looking at a child full of lies. But there were bulging veins on his forehead. His palms slowly tightened, the clenched fist pressing down on the paper. He looked at me, his tone allowing no room for negotiation. "Sangyu, you do a paternity test with him. Then I'll return him to you." What he wanted wasn't a paternity test between me and Zhao Zhao, nor was it the paper he already held in his hand. It was until he got the result he wanted. He brought in a blood collection tube and swabbed the back of my hand with a cotton ball. "It only needs a little blood, it won't hurt. If he's not my child, how could he be yours?" In my mind, I heard my hysterical and Zhengning voice again. "He's not my child. Fu Xingyi, I sent him to the orphanage. If you want him, go get him yourself." "I don't want him. I don't want to see him even once. No, he's not mine. No." "Mommy," Zhao Zhao didn't disobey. Fresh blood flowed from the back of my hand into the blood collection tube. I thought of the unrecognizable self I was, and looked at the crazy Ping Nanjin in front of me. I seemed to be sick again. My consciousness gradually dissipated. My body felt like it was sinking continuously, until a sudden, violent sound suddenly rang out outside the door. Then there was a chaotic sound of screams, the sound of something shattering. With a bang, the door was kicked open. I saw a figure, sweeping in like the wind. In an instant, Ping Nanjin was caught off guard and punched to the ground. The blood collection tube fell, and half a tube of blood flowed onto the ground. The person who broke in grabbed a chair and slammed it into his chest. Ping Nanjin's body, lying on the ground, trembled violently. The people chasing behind him were pale and exclaimed in alarm. "Professor Ping, this gentleman brought people and smashed several important instruments in the hospital. The laboratory reagents were ignited and exploded, and many important data were not recorded in time. Researcher Zhao has already called the police." Ping Nanjin didn't respond, struggling to get up with blood all over his face. He frantically picked up the blood collection tube on the ground, trying to get back the half tube of blood. Many more people rushed in, screaming, scolding, Chenju arguing. In my vision, everything was spinning. Fu Xingyi knelt down in front of me, his face stained with blood. Perhaps it was his own, or perhaps it was Ping Nanjin's. His eyes were bloodshot, and he reached out to hug me. "Zhao Zhao has been found. I had someone take him back. Sangyu, it's okay?" I reached out and pushed him away, my expression puzzled. "What Zhao Zhao? I don't have a child." Fu Xingye's expression suddenly froze. I repeated distractedly. "I don't have a child. I have never given birth to a child." Everything went black before my eyes. As I fell, he reached out and caught me. The last thing I heard was Ping Nanjin's distraught voice. "Sangyu, he's not your child." I slept for a very long time. Sometimes dreaming, sometimes awake, day and night were confused. After many years, I dreamed of that day again. My father, in order to get a cooperation from the Ping family's pharmaceutical group, dragged the whole family, smiling ingratiatingly, following the Ping family to climb the mountain and build rapport. As always, I was the one left behind. My parents crowded around the Ping family couple, pushing my eloquent older sister in front of Ping Nanjin. Ping Nanjin was polite on the surface, but his eyes hid impatience. When descending the mountain, he, like me, walked far behind. When my blood sugar dropped and I suddenly fell to the ground, my parents, sister, and the Ping family couple had long disappeared. Ping Nanjin had walked ahead of me for a while, but somehow walked back. He knelt down in front of me and gave me a piece of candy. Actually, that wasn't the first time he gave me candy. He was a boy, but he strangely always had candy in his pocket. I ate the candy and heard him softly ask me, "Why is your body so weak? Doesn't the Sang family give you money to eat?" Then he silently put the money in his outer coat pocket, into my pocket, and carried me down the mountain from the top. The two families were waiting at the foot of the mountain. When my father saw Ping Nanjin carrying me down, he was overjoyed. He looked at me squarely for the first time. My mother also smiled and said, "Nanjin and Sang, you have a very good relationship." The Ping family couple were a little displeased, but still politely said on the surface, "Sang Yu is well behaved. Nanjin has been obedient since he was a child. He only plays with well-behaved children." Ping Nanjin put me down, his body suddenly stiffened. After that, he rarely contacted me again. It was always me looking at his back. One day, he suddenly learned from my sister and skipped class to go drink. I passed by his university. Outside the school gate, I saw him standing with his mother. His mother was in pain and disbelief, and slapped him hard. Then she covered her face and cried in a suppressed way. Ping Nanjin said, "I'm sorry." I saw his hand, hanging by his side, clench silently. Later, I saw him on the flagpole platform. Stealthily, I reached out to touch my sister's shadow. The dream flashed, leaving only my hysterical, crazed self. I finally woke up with a start. I didn't know how long I had slept. I glanced at the window, the yellow leaves on the treetops all gone. I lowered my eyes, seeing Zhao Zhao, a furry head, sleeping beside my hand. Fu Xingye was holding a cup of water. With the other hand, he was taking small sips and feeding them to my lips. His eyes were bloodshot with exhaustion. He must have been up for a long time. Seeing me wake up, his hand suddenly trembled, and the water almost spilled on the bed. Zhao Zhao also woke up with a start. She jumped up, her face full of fear and helplessness. "Mommy, Zhao Zhao. Zhao Zhao is being good." Fu Xingye asked the nanny to take Zhao Zhao out, and then said, also at a loss, Then you rest, I'll go out too." I watched him silently as he walked towards the door. After a long while, I spoke with difficulty. "Can you take me to see the psychologist again?" I could feel it. I seemed to be getting sick again. Those things that hadn't bothered me for a long time were starting to drill into my mind, running amok. 5 years ago, at my most painful, I wanted to let myself get sick. To die from depression, it would be fine. No one cared, and I didn't care myself. The abortion I couldn't go through with, the job I lost, the overwhelming scolding, the desolate rest of my life. But now, I didn't want to get sick again. In these 5 years, I had actually figured out a lot of things. I wasn't wrong about what happened back then, and neither were Fu Xingye and Zhao Zhao. Fu Xingye was indeed drunk that night. His depression at that time was also real, to the point where he would hallucinate and want to die. His father had an affair and transferred all the marital assets. His mother was seriously ill and didn't have money to pay for medical expenses. He was desperate and knelt before his father's mistress. When the mistress threw money at his head, his mother saw it. At that time, his mother was already very ill and forgot that she needed money for treatment. She thought her son had also betrayed her, trying to please the mistress for money. His mother rushed over. She staggered and slapped him, her anger causing her to vomit blood and die on the spot. Soon after his mother died, his father took the mistress to another place, and they died in a car accident. He didn't have the opportunity to explain to his mother, nor did he have the opportunity to avenge his father. Only a huge inheritance was left for him to inherit. After that, he was diagnosed with depression. He said, "If I really was the person she thought I was when she died, that would be great." So in the eyes of outsiders, he became the person his mother thought he was when she died. Taking the money, he became a prodigal, playing games with the world. At that time, his so-called looking for me to watch the dog was just hoping that if I liked it, I could take his dog after he died. He knew I always liked children and small animals, probably as Sang Yu used to mock. Weak and incompetent people always like weak and incompetent things. In a sense, actually that night, it should have been me who forced him. After that, a person who was already prepared to die was Chan Rao, entangled, Chanja clung to by me like a ghost, facing the child I was carrying, facing the birth of Zhao Zhao, facing my most vicious curses, Facing the knife, I stabbed into his flesh. Fu Xingye turned around, looked at me lying on the bed, his fingers curling up uneasily. After a long while, he nodded cautiously. Okay. I went back to the psychological clinic. After many years, I received close treatment again. Psychological hypnosis plus drug treatment resealed those past events that had been drawn out of my heart, back into the depths. I still couldn't forget the past. But when I thought about those things again, the pain and despair gradually faded away. The day I walked out of the psychological clinic and saw the light of day again, I recalled the events of 5 years ago. It felt more like watching someone else's story. I didn't remember the hatred for Ping Nanjin very well. Nor did I remember how much I used to like him. The psychologist said to Fu Xingye. The treatment effect is the same as it was 4 years ago, which is very good. Miss Sang is already willing to forget. Psychological hypnosis is just to assist in achieving her own wishes. He then called Fu Xingye aside to explain other things. I walked to the window, looking at the bright sunshine outside. New shoots were growing on the treetops, and spring had come again. I remembered the way I was many years ago. I remembered Sangyu, who sat in the last row of the classroom, obediently attending class and obediently taking exams. I thought things will get better. Things have already gotten better. Those bad things are all in the past. I stretched my hand out the window, feeling the sunshine outside. Beside me, someone suddenly rushed over. I turned to look, and saw Sangyu's face distorted with resentment, and with the despair of someone at their wits' end. She splashed a beaker of something, fiercely, at my face. It looked like something from Ping Nanjin's laboratory. I instinctively dodged, raising my hand quickly to block my cheek. The contents of the cup splashed on my right hand, then trickled down my arm. An excruciating, burning pain instantly spread through my hand. Sangyu stared at me, laughing maniacally, tears streaming down her face. Fu Xingye rushed over from not far away, and slammed the cell phone in his hand, hard at Sangyu. The cell phone hit Sangyu in one of her eyes, and her eyes quickly filled with red, whether it was from emotional overexcitement, or from the blood flowing out. She screamed in pain, and still wanted to pounce on me. Ping Nanjin, I don't know where he came from, kicked her hard in the chest. She fell, her head hitting the wall heavily. I was held by Fu Xingye, who called a doctor for emergency treatment. Behind me was Sangyu's hoarse voice. Ping Nanjin, what right do you have to hit me? What right do you have? You were the one who chased me abroad. You said you didn't love me anymore, and I waited for you bitterly for 5 years abroad. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have ended up like this, not even knowing who the father of my child is. Ping Nanjin hurried towards me, his cold voice replying to Sangyu. You weren't waiting for me. You were just using it as an excuse for your indulgence abroad. Sangyu sobbed and cried, her voice becoming sharper. I don't care, I don't care. It's all because of you. You have to take responsibility for me. You have to take responsibility for my child. 5 years ago you abandoned Sangyu for me. What are you pretending for? Now you're trying to find her every day. The police arrived quickly and handcuffed Sangyu, who was still causing a scene. She shouted shrilly again. It's that bitch, she stole my man. It's not my fault, it's not my fault. Police officers, you have to stand up for me. She's always been like this since she was little. No matter how outrageous the things she does, she never admits she's wrong. This is the principle her parents taught her from birth. She's always the spoiled one, always never wrong. But this time, no one stood in front of her anymore. The police took her away. The doctor bandaged my arm and sighed softly. It's sulfuric acid. Thankfully it was diluted, so the injury isn't too serious. Otherwise, a hand could have been ruined. If it had been splashed on your face, it would have been even more unimaginable. Sangyu's original intention must have been to ruin my face. She couldn't tell if it had been diluted. She always does things as she pleases, without considering the consequences. Ping Nanjin stood outside the hospital room door, looking lost and regretful. Regretful about what? I don't know. I stayed in the hospital to recover. Late at night, when Fu Xingye went to the doctor's office to get my bill, my parents rushed into the ward. My mother burst into tears. Just like before, she pointed at me and accused me in a shrill voice. Aren't you not seriously injured either? Your sister has a sense of propriety. She knew the concentration of the sulfuric acid wasn't high. Why are you so vicious, sending a pregnant woman close to giving birth to the police station? She's your own sister. Do you have a conscience? My father was heartbroken, his eyes full of hatred. She's been like this since she was a child, lifeless like a ghost. She's never been able to be raised to be close, not even half as good as you are. I watched them rant and rave indifferently. My mother saw that she couldn't persuade me. She suddenly knelt down with a thud, her head hitting the ground heavily. I beg you, I'm begging you as a mother, okay? Your sister is a pregnant woman, she can't be detained. I don't know what Nanjing said. The police station still won't release her. Hurry up and go. Hurry up and get your sister out. She lunged at me, trying to drag me off the bed. I raised my left hand. For the first time in my life, I slapped her hard across the face. I told her word by word, while her expression was stiff, and she couldn't come back to her senses. I won't go get her out. And never again will I care about your mess. My father rushed over angrily, and was about to hit me. You even dare to hit your own mother. Sangyu, I think you've turned against heaven. The hand he raised towards me was grabbed and thrown away by Fu Xingye, who had returned to the ward with the bill. Another chaotic mess of scolding, crying, and accusations. Hospital security took my parents away. This time, I was left with only calmness. Fu Xingye hurriedly put down the bill, sat down on the hospital bed, and stared at me saying, "Are you okay?" I shook my head. "I'm okay." He was still worried, his face was tense, and he looked me up and down carefully. I said softly, "I'm really okay. Fu Xingye, I won't let them bully me anymore." He looked at me, and finally breathed a sigh of relief. I told him about the past. When I was 3 years old, I was playful. I was playing with Sangyu and accidentally pushed her over. Her head hit the corner of the table, and she stayed in the hospital for a few days. After that, my parents always told me, my sister got sick because I pushed her over, making her body weak. My sister's grades were bad. My sister was spoiled and made mistakes because I pushed her over. Fu Xingye took a warm towel and helped me wipe my hands. I slapped my mother. I thought I could be very calm, but my palms were sweating a lot. He held my hands silently through the towel. I continued softly. For many, many years, my parents told me that, and I believed it. I felt a deep sense of guilt and remorse, and I accommodated her and obeyed her countless times. But actually, I paid her back a long time ago. At that time, she was probably not seriously injured. That was just an excuse my parents made for their favoritism. It was a shackle that my parents put on me to make me give in to everything. I told Fu Xingye, as if telling myself, I don't owe anyone anymore. So from now on, I don't want to have any relationship with them ever again. Fu Xingye held my hand through the towel, his palm gently tightening. There was pity in his eyes, and he said softly, Sangyu, you never owed anyone anything. In this world, he was the first person to say these words to me. A deep sourness welled up in my eyes, and at this moment, it suddenly occurred to me. Actually, in these past few years, he had already become like half of my family. Before, I never had any family. I said softly, You're the same. Fu Xingye, you never owe anyone anything either. The hand holding mine trembled suddenly. I couldn't see the emotions in his lowered eyes, but I knew there was a deep pain in them. A pain that had tormented him day and night for years. A surge of guilt and unvented grievances. I pulled my hand away, and then held on to his wrist, which he was trying hard to suppress but was still trembling. When you have time, I'll go with you to the tomb and see your mother. You can explain it to her. She will definitely hear it. Or perhaps she already knows. She's very sad, thinking she wronged you at the time of her death. You resent her, so you don't go to see her. Fu Xingye suddenly raised his eyes, his scarlet gaze meeting mine. I don't resent her. Back then she was sick, she wasn't very clear-headed. I met his painful eyes and nodded. Yes, she was sick, she made a mistake. It's not your fault. Fu Xingye's thin lips trembled violently. He suddenly reached out and hugged me, his trembling chin pressing against my shoulder. He didn't want me to see his face anymore, but I knew at that moment he was crying. In this world he was just like me. No one had ever told him that it wasn't his fault. His mother's death was not his fault. After being discharged from the hospital, I accompanied him to his mother's grave. I watched as, after many years, he knelt before that black and white gentle photograph. And for the first time he said, "I didn't try to please her and I never betrayed you." The wind swirled up fallen green leaves, gently blowing them to his feet, like the woman who had also loved and doted on him so much in the past, giving him a gentle response. When we got home, Zhao Zhao stood outside the door on the front yard steps, peering at me cautiously. Seeing me get out of the car and walk over, he took a step back in fear and anxiety. I walked up the steps, reached out, and gently hugged him, saying, "Mommy's back from the hospital. Isn't Zhao Zhao going to call me mommy anymore?" Zhao Zhao suddenly raised his head to look at me. His little face trembled violently, and tears quickly filled his eyes. He clutched my sleeve tightly and burst into loud sobs. "I thought you didn't want me anymore. You said you didn't have any children. I'll be good, mommy, don't want Zhao Zhao." I hugged him tightly, a dull pain in my chest. "I'm sorry, mommy was just sick a few days ago." Zhao Zhao buried his head in my arms. Like he had survived a catastrophe, he cried himself to sleep. My life gradually returned to peace. Ping Nanjin still often appeared near me. Sometimes he was drunk, and still said dejectedly, "Sang Yu, he's not your child." I stopped paying attention to him, indifferently walking past him and leaving. The media began to report that Professor Ping, who had always been flawless in the research institute, was spacing out during important seminars. When interviewed by reporters, he gave irrelevant answers. One day, I left the pet funeral parlor after work in the evening. Through the half-open glass door, I saw Ping Nanjin standing outside again, lost in thought. I thought about turning around and leaving through the back door. But suddenly, I saw his mother rush over. The woman who had always been meticulously made up and had a calm and elegant expression. At this moment, her hair was disheveled, and her face was out of control and agitated. She rushed in front of Ping Nanjin. Without saying a word, she slapped him hard across the face. "It's been more than half a year. You've been back in the country for more than half a year. Ping Nanjin, how much more are you going to make a scene? Sang Yu is married, and her child is already in school. What else do you want? What else can you do? You've made me lose all face. You've made me unable to hold my head up in front of your father and that slut." Ping Nanjin stared blankly at his mother. I saw his hand hanging at his side, his palm clenching silently. Just like many years ago, after he learned to skip class and drink alcohol from Sang Yu. After his mother slapped him. But this time, he didn't lower his eyes and say sorry like he did then. He looked at his mother, and after a long while, he gave a miserable laugh. "What do I want, don't you know? I just want to catch my breath." His mother's furious expression froze for a moment. Ping Nanjin's voice contained a deep hoarseness and weariness. "Father already remarried and has another family. You can't bear to divorce, so you want me to surpass that woman's child in everything. To use me to anger that mother and son. To make me win back father's heart. Every step of my life must be walked on the path you want, the most glorious and beautiful one. But mother, I want to breathe." Ping Nanjin's eyes gradually reddened in the night. "Mother, don't you understand? It's been over 10 years. That man's heart will never come back. And my life, it's all been to make you proud. I've never gotten what I wanted." The woman's face, furious a moment ago, gradually filled with deep pain and helplessness. "But Nanjin, he's your father. That slut seduced him, and all these years he still loves us actually. Isn't that woman's son in the research institute under your control? Soon we'll have our chance." Ping Nanjin's voice trembled as he interrupted her. "I don't want to continue. I won't continue playing this game with you. I want to find Sang Yu. I want something that I actually want." The woman's face seemed to tear apart with despair. Her emotions gradually spiraled out of control, and she screamed. "Even if Sang Yu hadn't married and had children, she doesn't love you, don't you understand? You heard it with your own ears on the wedding day 5 years ago. She was cleaning up a mess for her sister. You went abroad for 5 years because of that, and you still don't get it. I stood inside the glass door. I calmly recalled that uncompleted wedding from long ago. That day, I was wearing a wedding dress, waiting in the resting room to go on stage. My mother was ecstatically guarding me. Ping Nanjin's mother came in, her expression barely concealing her displeasure. I know everything about you replacing your sister. Nanjin is willing, so I have nothing to say. I don't expect anything else from you. But from now on, you at least have to listen to me as obediently as Nanjin does in everything. Afraid that something might go wrong at the wedding, my mother rushed forward with a forced smile. Don't worry. My Sangyu doesn't have any other skills. She's just good at being obedient. Marriage is a lifetime affair, and her sister changed her mind on a whim. We asked her to take her place, and she was so anxious that she didn't say a word for a long time. She didn't want to do it. But when I cried, she nodded. She always couldn't help but show off how obedient I was to her. Like talking about a little cat or dog. But at that time, I didn't say a word for a long time. It was just because it was so sudden, such a surprise, and so much panic. Ping Nanjin's mother left, utterly disgusted. I saw a familiar figure flash past outside the door. After that, I went on stage, and the news had already spread below. Ping Nanjin had sent a message to his mother, and suddenly pursued Sangyu abroad. I pulled my thoughts back. I saw Ping Nanjin standing in the summer night breeze, his face forlorn. His mother's voice was anxious. That time, I gave you the opportunity to choose for yourself. But what was the result? What a mess you made for me. Sangyu was hysterical, acting like a madwoman. No matter how much money I gave her, she wouldn't give up. She lost her phone, demanding your contact information. And then she went abroad. It was utter chaos. I lost all face. The look of loss and defeat on Ping Nanjin's face suddenly changed. What did you say? Ping Nanjin's mother replied. I said you made me lose face. You said. Who acted like a madwoman? Ping Nanjin's voice trembled violently for the first time. His mother frowned at him. Sangyu, of course. She always seemed so obedient, but then she suddenly acted like a mad dog. Unable to contact you, she went abroad to search for you like a needle in a haystack. She stuffed all her meager savings into the media to accuse you, dreaming of ruining you and Sangyu. She said you broke your promise, said you betrayed her. Emotions surged on Ping Nanjin's face. He staggered back, his voice trembling, almost unintelligible. Impossible. She never gave me a single message. His mother's voice still carried lingering fear. Didn't I say she lost her phone? In that crazy state she was in, how would I dare give her your new number abroad? At that time, your father and that slut were laughing at me. I felt like the sky was falling. As she spoke, she continued with some absent-mindedness and unease. Otherwise, I wouldn't have done something like that. Her mother drugged her and sent her to someone else's bed. I couldn't bear others saying that you had made a mistake, so I went along with it. I said that you only went abroad because she was sleeping around. Ping Nanjin suddenly took a step back. Then, in a panic and disarray, he reached out and supported himself on a tree beside him. The blood drained quickly from his pale face. What welled up between his features was the ultimate disbelief, panic and dread. He finally understood where Zhao Zhao had come from. He finally understood. 5 years ago, he thought that after he called off the wedding, Sangyu had been silent and submissive. But in reality, she had tried her best to make a scene for half a year, looking for him like a madwoman. He was never stupid, so he wouldn't fail to understand. If I had never loved him, I wouldn't have acted hysterically, wouldn't have hated him so much. And 5 years ago, if he hadn't been so arrogant, if he had only taken the initiative to contact me, if he had only returned home to see me, he would have known that everything he had taken for granted for the past 5 years was wrong. But now, it's all in the past. Ping Nanjin's face was trembling wildly. His emotions were rapidly losing control, collapsing, in despair. His eyes were bloodshot, and he suddenly raised a hand towards his mother. That hand trembled violently. How could you treat her like that? Why didn't anyone ever tell me? The woman looked up in disbelief. Looking at his raised hand, her voice shrill. What do you want to do, hit me? Ping Nanjin, how many years have I raised you? Your father hurt me for another woman. Do you want to do the same? Are you crazy? Ping Nanjin's trembling hand eventually drooped down weakly. His face was filled with only deathly blankness and hopelessness. His mother said furiously, "Treat her like that. If you hadn't left her at the altar, why would I have had to face a hysterical madwoman? Why else would her mother have sent her to another man's bed? Who started this who?" Ping Nanjin stared blankly at his mother, desperately supporting himself against the tree trunk. But his body still staggered several times. He finally couldn't bear to look at the person in front of him. He avoided her gaze, turned his head, and looked towards the glass door. And then through the door his eyes met mine silently. In that instant, I saw a tear slip from the corner of his eye. I had known Ping Nanjin for over 20 years. This was the second time I had seen him cry. The first time was when he was in middle school and had a high fever, missing a perfect score in math by 1 point. His mother made him stand outside in the yard, hungry. When I passed his house on my way home, I happened to hear his stomach growl. I opened my school bag and gave him a piece of bread. He looked down at me. After a long while, he said very softly, "My mom doesn't let me eat junk food." I walked in front of him, blocking the direction of the wrought iron gate and said, "Then eat it quickly, I'll block for you." I watched him silently finish the piece of bread. He lowered his head and suddenly a tear fell. At the time, I couldn't understand how such an ordinary piece of bread could taste so good that it made him cry. Years later, I began to understand. That day for him wasn't just about eating a piece of bread. It was probably the first time in his life that he had broken out of that cage. I looked at him through the glass door at that moment, at the endless regret, sadness, and hopelessness in his eyes. But this time, I would never give him another piece of bread. I calmly closed the glass door and locked it. Then I turned around and silently walked towards the back door and left. He seemed to have chased after me. I heard the sound of the glass door being pounded heavily. But I didn't look back. I never agreed to see him again, nor did I ever answer his calls. At the end of the month, I received a text message from Ping Nanjin using an unfamiliar number. He talked about the arranged marriage back then. He said that he knew from the beginning that Sangyu wouldn't obediently marry him. He knew that the Sang family would definitely push me out to replace Sangyu. He just wanted to know if I would be willing. That day, Sangyu came home covered in bruises. When he carried her away, he actually saw me at the window. He just wanted to know if I would care. Or perhaps in all things he just wanted to know if I too loved him. And on the wedding day, he heard those words through the door and felt a surge of unwillingness. Unwilling that I was really just willing. Just compliant. I didn't finish reading the text message, I just deleted it, and then blacklisted the new number. Some words said too late. Lose all meaning, only adding disgust. My life continued as usual. In the autumn, I accidentally learned of Sangyu's death. After she injured me with sulfuric acid that time, my parents paid me a sum of money on her behalf. Besides that, as a pregnant woman, she wasn't actually sentenced. But she still couldn't stand it, and felt she had suffered a great injustice. She made a fuss, demanding that Ping Nanjin take responsibility for her child. She was slapped hard by Ping Nanjin's mother. That night, she bought so-called medicine for a smooth late-term abortion from some shady workshop pharmacy. She said in a fit of pique that she was going to abort the child. She never considered the consequences of her actions. And then those drugs caused her to hemorrhage severely, resulting in 2 deaths. This time, my parents couldn't make up for her mistakes. The life she lost could never be brought back. After that, it was still endless chaos. The black market pharmacy was investigated, and the people involved were arrested. My parents, having lost their beloved daughter, turned white overnight, and were almost driven mad. When I heard about those things, I no longer had much feeling left. In late autumn, Fu Xingye's husky tore up the house again. The dog bit open a cloth box he had hidden in the cabinet, spilling letters and photos all over the floor. After Zhao Zhao discovered the scene, she picked up a photo and rushed downstairs to find me, saying, "It's full of Mom's pictures in there. It bit Mom's pictures, it's done for." I saw that the photo was a picture of my back as I walked in the backyard when I was in middle school. On the ground, there was also the shadow of a boy walking behind me. I thought for a long time before I remembered. That was when I was young, secretly bringing Fu Xingye to live in my bedroom. At that time, Fu Xingye's house was next door to mine. His dad was rarely home. His mom was in poor health, and when she got sick, she became emotionally volatile. She often kicked him out. At that time, I lived in a small room on the first floor of my house, near the backyard, which was almost a storage room. I thought he seemed even more pitiful than me, so I took him through the small back door. I gave him a spot on the floor in my small storage room to sleep. He was a notorious loafer back then, and I couldn't help but nag him. "Don't go rummaging through my things." His eyes were red, and he protested in a small voice. "I'm not a husky." Back then, there were many things I didn't know, and I asked him curiously. "What's a husky?" Fu Xingye explained. "A very annoying kind of dog. Very noisy, always jumping around the house." I thought about it and couldn't help but say, it might be nice to have one. My life in my youth was always too quiet. I didn't have many friends, and my family didn't bother with me. I slept in the most remote storage room, staying in the most unnoticed corner. But I longed for more activity in my life. Probably because I often felt very lonely. I followed Zhao Zhao upstairs. I looked at the scattered photos and diary pages all over the floor, and the dog cowering in the corner pretending to be dead. The wind blew in from the window, blowing a page of paper to my feet. I picked it up and saw the boy's immature handwriting. "I want to get a husky for Sangyu someday. I'll give her a dog she likes. Will she maybe like me a little too?" Scattered across the floor. Every page had my name on it. Years later, I inadvertently glimpsed a young boy's secret thoughts. Footsteps hurried upstairs, and Fu Xingye rushed in, flustered. He looked at me, then at all the things on the floor. His body froze. The man who never behaved properly had red ears and looked utterly lost in that moment. I packed up my things and asked him softly, "Fu Xingye, are we still getting a divorce?" His voice was in disarray at that moment. Can we not get divorced?" I glanced at him. "Aren't you against marriage?" The man was instantly flustered, explaining incoherently. "Because I knew you just wanted a marriage of convenience to get Zhao Zhao into school, a fake marriage. I thought you didn't want to be responsible for me." I couldn't help but smile in the silent sunlight pouring in from the French windows. At the end of the year, I took Zhao Zhao to the mall to buy New Year's supplies. I ran into Ping Nanjing by the shelves again. His face was pale and he looked much thinner and more haggard. He was using his left hand to put a bucket of instant noodles into his shopping cart. I was shocked that he would eat such junk food now. His right hand hung stiffly at his side. He was wearing a glove, strangely, covering his palm and wrist completely. I only glanced at it briefly. Then I looked away and continued to choose snacks with Zhao Zhao. But Ping Nanjing walked through the crowd and hurried towards me. He tried so hard to appear calm and natural, but couldn't hide his panic and eagerness. "It's been a while. Can we have a meal together? They just opened a new..." I interrupted him softly. "No. I didn't even bother making up an excuse." He lowered his eyes in embarrassment and disappointment. Seeing my hand, his eyes trembled violently again. I followed his gaze and saw the diamond ring on my ring finger. When he first returned to the country, Fu Xingye and I were still in a marriage of convenience, and I didn't wear a ring. Ping Nanjing's lips trembled several times before he managed to squeeze out a stiff smile. "Congratulations," I responded. "Thank you." I led Zhao Zhao away. Behind me, he stood there for a long time without moving. When I went to the cashier to pay, I heard a few people in front of me talking. "Isn't that Professor Ping from the Research Institute? He used to be almost a celebrity. How did he fall into such a state?" The person next to him whispered, "He's not a professor anymore. I heard he accidentally knocked over a beaker of concentrated sulfuric acid during an experiment. His right hand is completely ruined. The institute wanted to keep him, said they would find him extra assistants. He can still work with his left hand. But he refused and resigned." After that there was a soft sigh. I was shocked to hear that. I knew very well that with his ability and experience, There was no way he could have accidentally knocked over a beaker of sulfuric acid. But somehow he ruined his hand and gave up his job. I paid the bill and led Zhao Zhao out of the mall. It was snowing outside the Bayshore Mall. Approaching the new year, everywhere was filled with festive joy. In the silent, swirling snow, I suddenly remembered that year on the mountaintop. Ping Nanjing knelt in front of me and asked softly, "Why is your health so bad? Doesn't the Sang family give you money to eat?" I couldn't say anything. He put all the money in his coat pocket into my pocket. I heard him sigh softly. "Sang Yu, can I treat you to a meal sometime?"